East of the Rocky Mountains and west of the Mississippi lies one of North America's most important landscapes, the grasslands of the Great Plains. Here, land stewardship rests on the shoulders of ranching families and conservation groups. For generations, ranchers' livelihoods have depended on the sustainable management of both public and private grasslands, but this isn't easy. From year to year, rainfall varies from plentiful to scarce, which means there are large swings in how much forage is available for cattle. Drought can have devastating financial consequences for family ranchers and can threaten their ability to stay on the land. Conservation groups work to promote the diversity of plants and wildlife in grassland landscapes. But this region of the world is changing quickly. Habitat loss due to urban development, farming, and grazing practices is putting a squeeze on birds that live only in these grasslands. For some species, their populations are only a fraction of what they were in the 1960s. Despite a common interest in doing what is best for the land, ranchers and conservation groups do not often work together. In part, this divide exists because of misconceptions.
I think the biggest thing that people think is we just abuse the land, just turn our cows out and abuse the land and gather our cows and sell our calves and make millions, they all think.
I think one of the biggest misgivings about conservation and specifically T&C involved in land management like this is that we are often perceived as being a protectionist agency or organization in that we set land aside and never touch it. They assume that we are going to be anti-something, and no, we're pro working on the land and managing it for its conservation values.
You know, on the Pawnee, it's a complex ecosystem and the groups involved are numerous, and so the decision-making process is just as complex.
There's a lot of concern, especially when you have an intermix of private ranches and public land all interspersed. Then it just naturally creates conflict.
In 2013, a participatory, multi-stakeholder grazing experiment was created to test a more inclusive way of managing these landscapes that balances production and conservation goals.
This project was set up with 3 groups of stakeholders. We have the professional agencies, Forest Service, NRCS, State Land Board, and then we have the ranchers, the people who their interest is really about utilizing the resource to grow their cattle. And then we have the wildlife sector, so the people that recognize how important the grasslands are to providing habitat, and if we lose those grasslands, then we lose those habitats.
This experiment is known as CARM, short for Collaborative Adaptive Rangeland Management. Half of the experimental grassland is subject to adaptive management, where the stakeholder group makes decisions about the grazing strategy based on past experiences, monitoring data, and current weather conditions. The other half of the experimental grassland is managed with a traditional approach for this region, and the results of these 2 approaches are compared.
What is most unique to me is the idea of giving these stakeholders complete decision-making power in the experiment. Most of the collaboratives that I've been aware of, particularly those working on public land, are usually you have stakeholders who are serving in an advisory role to a decision maker. But here it's almost the reverse, where in this normal situation, the researchers would be the decision makers. They would decide how to conduct the experiment, and that's how it's supposed to be done. But here we've given up that control, and the stakeholders have full power, and I think that's probably what keeps them engaged.
Many stakeholders highlight how much they are learning.
I think what keeps me coming back to the meetings is you learn something every second of the meeting.
I learned from everybody at the table the science part of it is fascinating. The science team has done an amazing job of helping us get the data to the questions that the group has at a really quick turnaround.
I'm learning something that I can take back to my job and take back to the rest of the Nature Conservancy in Colorado. And so I'll come back into the office after this meeting and say, guess what I learned? Here's what we need to do differently, or I need to connect with somebody else who's testing something that we need to learn about. So I feel like I get as much as I give from this process.
You can't be in anything and not want to learn, and you know, ranching's the same way. And you know, to be able to go to that group and meet the people that have nothing to do with ranching, they never saw a cow hardly in their life, but you know, they understand what our viewpoint is as far as we have to make money with those cattle.
Now in its 5th year, members are returning every year to participate and vote.
Over the last 5 years, I think that trust has developed.
People are getting to know one another more as people rather than as representatives of Organization X. And that's powerful because when you get to know people on a personal level, that changes the dynamic somewhat, and there's a lot of trust building going on.
There's a lot of respect, even when there's strong disagreements. And everyone's very open to learning.
The group I think, is fantastic to work with. Sure, I see thousands of birds out here every day, but to understand, you know, that maybe they need a little shorter grass or a little longer grass or a little different species or whatever, you know, and so that's been real fun for me.
I'm incredibly hopeful that what we learn here can be applied more broadly, and I think it can.
We've built a lot of trust and things are moving in the right direction, but we definitely haven't figured out how to solve all of our problems, and we've been struggling with trying to achieve our livestock weight gain objectives and also our bird conservation objectives, and I don't think we know what the answer is yet. So I'm hoping that moving forward we can take our good process and move it towards creating good outcomes.
The future will bring many challenges in grasslands. Lasting solutions to those challenges will require successful collaborations. The CARM experiment is a unique opportunity to see how collaboration in rangeland management decision-making works and share those results with current and future generations.